Hello everyone, my name is Asif and I work as a Director of Technology Salesforce at Royal Cyber. I welcome you all in today's session on behalf of Royal Cyber and Conscia, and I'm so grateful to all of you that you guys made it to today's session. So as part of today's session, we are going to talk about the accelerator, or the launch of an accelerator which we have created, which we have developed for Conscia.ai for sales, exclusively for Salesforce B2C Composable Commerce. So before going into that direction, I'll very quickly give a quick overview of Royal Cyber. So we are Salesforce crest level consulting partners. And we are Link certified partners as well with Salesforce, and we have been recently been approved as one of the authorized and approved implementation partners for Salesforce B2C Composable Commerce. We have right now highest numbers of accelerators developed within the Salesforce B2C Composable Commerce partners ecosystem. We do B2C commerce as part of Salesforce Digital. We do B2C commerce. We do Marketing Cloud. Within the B2C commerce, we do SFRA migrations. We do headless and composable implementations. We do site gen, managed application development and support services. Within the Marketing Cloud, we also provide SFMC, Marketing Cloud implementation and support services. We do Interaction Studio. As part of Salesforce Core, we do all Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Data Cloud, and B2B as well as D2C commerce too, as part of the core platform. With respect to the Conscia Accelerator, before we go into that direction, I just want to very quickly go over how Salesforce has packaged and launched composable commerce, which this is very important to understand before we go into the Conscia side. So Salesforce launched this solution, this composable commerce solution, officially last year, exactly at the same Connections 2023. They packaged this solution, with PWA kit storefront. There's a React-based storefront which is part of the PWA kit. So they gave complete storefront from login till checkout functionality as part of this PWA kit storefront. Then on top of it, they also introduced this managed runtime, which you can use to host this storefront, where you deploy this storefront, and this managed runtime comes with out-of-the-box caching and the ECDN functionalities. In next hour, you would see a complete demo, end-to-end demo of this storefront. And then at the back end, it's B2C commerce engine, from where this components are these components, your pricing, your catalog, your promotions, your payment, text, everything is getting pulled from those B2C commerce. Now, when Salesforce launched this package, they launched it from two different directions. One was the CMS, other one was the search. And this package is the out of the box, where they introduced this page designer, which is already the part of Salesforce SFRA and site gen. So they introduced the same page designer as part of the CMS within this composable storefront as well. Along with this CMS, from the search side, out of the box, they introduced Einstein Search. So it means any customer who would like to move to composable commerce, Salesforce B2C Composable Commerce, without going to any third-party CMS or search providers, they can still move to composable commerce using the page designer and Einstein Search. So this is how the out-of-the-box packaged Salesforce has packaged this B2C Composable Commerce. Now in this second packaging, you see that CMS and the search, where the page designer and the Einstein Search was there out of the box, now it has been replaced with the third-party search providers, which are, let's say, Amplience, Algolia, Contentful. So this is another packaging. If any customer who wants more richer, multi-brand experience, multi-locale experience, and they want to go with third-party CMS or the search providers, they can choose any of the best of the breed available in market from the CMS and the search providers, and even from the other side of the components, which includes payment, text, shipping, This is second model. Third is where the Conscia comes into play. Now, what Conscia has done, Conscia is a digital orchestration solution. Sana would be presenting how this solution works in more details. But here, what we have done is, as part of the accelerator, we have put Conscia in the middle. So you have these third-party solutions, which is your CMS, which is your search, which is your payment, text, shipping, and all these solutions are getting connected with Conscia's orchestration layer. And within the Conscia's orchestration layer, you will see as part of the demo that how the data which is getting pulled from these third-party applications gets modeled within this Conscia's layer, and then there's a mapping which gets created, not using the code, but just using the drag and drop components. The codes get generated itself at the backend, and then on top of it, how Conscia's model that data to render it to different systems, which includes your web, which includes your mobile, which includes your kiosk, which includes your watch, any device, and that is again not using the code, but using just the drag and drop options or pick and choose options. So the idea here is from the Conscia is to avoid that glue code which our UI developers or the let's say if we are talking about React-based storefronts, or React-based developers or the React developers used to write at the code level to make it work for different devices or to render that data to a different devices. I'll quickly, I'm trying to move quickly so that we can jump to the demo. Now, as part of the migration pathways which Salesforce has introduced, the best thing where all right, so as part of the hybrid storefront, so Salesforce has given this model which is called hybrid storefront. Now, hybrid storefront means you keep your catalog pages on, you start moving your catalog pages or migrating your catalog pages on Composable, on the React-based storefront or any other storefront which you bring, and then keep rest of the pages which are your cart pages on still on SiteGen or on your SFRA architecture. So it means you are actually reducing your risk in terms of all-in-one migration, all-in-one-go migration. And this hybrid storefront model is completely supported by Salesforce. So Salesforce has introduced a connector or a cartridge in Salesforce terms, which is called SLS cartridge, which manages the session or bridges the session between the React-based storefront, your cart pages, means your PLP, PDP, home page, all static pages, and the catalog pages and the cart pages, which are still on your SFRA or the SiteGen SS storefront. So you are managing actually two different code bases. One code base which manages your cart, pages, which is still on SFRA or on SiteGen, and on the other side, your code base is the React-based storefront code base. And this SLS cartridge actually manages this connection between these two different storefronts. The idea or the objective here from Salesforce is to push customers who are on SiteGen SS or even on SFRA to move towards or to kick off their composable journey with the minimum risk, with the minimum cost as well. Now, overall, based on the customer experience which we have with different customers we are working with, and the proposals which we have given to the customers, we believe that if we on an average, if we take the time to move any customer or to migrate any customer from to this hybrid storefront model and start kicking off the composable journey on this hybrid storefront model, it takes around 4 months of effort, around 16 weeks of time to have all of their catalog pages migrated to the React-based storefront. Now this is without Conscia. Now here, if we put the Conscia's layer in between, as I said that it reduces a lot of effort. It reduces a lot of effort from the development side. Conscia brings this orchestration layer where you don't have to code that much. You are actually avoiding that glue code. You are avoiding that code which is required to model your data, which you get from third-party Accelerator or from third-party application within Salesforce. So all that mid-layer work is being already done within Conscia. So you just drag and drop and get this done without writing a single line of code. So that's why the effort which you see, it comes down almost the half of what you normally see in a hybrid storefront model in a composable project. And same applies in a one go. Now, if we are doing, now Salesforce has introduced hybrid storefront model. It means you keep your checkout on the SFRA or on SiteGen, and you still have your catalog pages migrated to the React-based storefront. That is one model. On the other side, if you want to do complete migration all in one go, means all of the pages you want them to be migrated on composable, then this is another model where you can migrate all of your pages. And in a normal timeline, this is almost 24 to 30 weeks, 36 weeks timeline. But if we put Conscia in picture and in the middle as an orchestration layer, which actually manages all this orchestration, all the data modeling, all the glue code, all the data rendering, then again this comes down from 36 weeks to 12 to 16 weeks. And how this happens, we'll see in Sana's presentation, and we'll see as part of the demo as well. So how do we start? So normally within Royal Cyber, what we do is we start conducting a thorough assessment of a customer's existing space. We do almost 1 to 2 weeks of assessment where we study customer's environment, we do analysis, and then we come up with a thorough document and our recommendations that what would be the best approach, and then come up with the official SOW or a proposal, and then we kick off the project. Okay, what makes us different than the other SIs? So as I mentioned that we have right now almost the highest number of accelerators among all the partner ecosystem which we have in the B2C composable commerce. We have done this hybrid storefront for both SFRA and SiteGen customers. We have integrations with Contentful, Algolia, Stripe, Adyen, Avalara, Cloudinary, Amplian, Stellan1, Einstein, ShipperHQ, 3Kit, Braintree. All this has been available. If any customer is interested in looking at the demo for any of these accelerators with Conscia, we have all it available. Plus, we are App Exchange partners, so we have almost 10 different cartridges. If you go on Salesforce App Exchange and look for look for Royal Cyber, you will see 10 different cartridges would be appearing. And we are transforming those cartridges now from SFRA to composable. Plus, we have an in-house developed testing automation solution, which is a SaaS-based solution. So that is also one of the add-ons which comes as part of our services. Any customer who engages with us within the capacity of any project, migration project, support services project, all these solutions comes as free with no additional charges. We do 9-point assessment where our UI UX team comes into the picture. They study the customer environment, customer storefront from the UX point of view. They then provide recommendations along with the recommendations with the wireframes as well. They do the performance assessment as well, and they come up with the recommendations. These are all add-ons which comes as free. We have 4.8 out of 5 customer satisfaction rating on Salesforce App Exchange. And as I mentioned that we start with the 2 weeks discovery. So any of the customer who is interested in addressing any of their Salesforce existing challenges, or any of the, they want to discuss any of their roadmaps for Salesforce composable commerce, or even anything relevant with Salesforce, we are there to help and address. All right, so I'll pass it on to Sana.
Hey, my name is Sana Remiki. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Conscia. So Conscia is that orchestration layer that Asif just introduced to you guys. I'll tell you a little bit about how exactly the orchestration layer helps accelerate your build up to 5x. And when I say 5x, of course, it's not for every single case. Depends on the complexity that we're dealing with. The more backend systems, the more we can help, because we're helping customers that have very complex tech ecosystems, so enterprise customers typically. So the current state of building headless and composable stacks looks something like this. Asif also referred to what we call glue code. So what is that glue code that is sitting at the channel level when you're connecting to all the various backend systems. That's the thing that does all of the API chaining, the transformation of the schemas, the business logic, the integration logic with all of those back-end systems, right? So what ends up happening is you have all of that logic completely segregated, fragmented across all the various front ends. And what that does is, from a customer standpoint, you have a pretty fragmented experience. And also, just from a stability standpoint, just from a development standpoint, you're doing a lot of redundant coding, right? So each of those channels that really should be sharing the same business logic are not. Now you have to build that every single time you create a new front end. So whether it's a web application or mobile or kiosks, etc. Performance is another big concern. Because the code is sitting in the front end, a lot of times you're making those round-trip calls to the back end every single time to connect to those back-end services. Sometimes, like we'll get you an example soon, but a lot of the data that's required by the front end requires multiple back-end calls. And if you have to do that all in the front end, and there's no caching, there's no, there's no performance gains in the front end at all, you end up having performance issues too. So Conscia acts as that orchestration layer that sits between the front end, any front end, and any back end. In the context of what we're talking about here today, we're talking about the composable storefront, the PWA kit, but of course it could be any other front end as well. So all of that logic that I was just speaking about, so connecting to the back end systems, caching, dynamically caching the responses from the various API endpoints, a rules engine that serves as a business logic layer. So if this, then that, like that type of logic, which typically ends up getting coded in some sort of a BFF, like a backend for front end, or ends up being coded right into your front end code itself. That is what is now sitting in the orchestration layer. Transformation of data from those backend systems to make it meet the requirements of any front end. That is happening in that layer. Chaining of API calls, stitching of schemas, and then there's also webhooks and listeners. So for example, for payment gateways, when something is authorized, you need to make a call back to the server to say, okay, we're done. Now send an email to the customer, for instance. So there's webhooks and listeners available in that layer as well. So we can connect to, of course, the B2C Commerce Cloud, the Demandware backend, but also the core APIs, right? So if you're looking for some capability from the Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud, Sales Cloud, etc., we can connect to any APIs. As long as your backend has APIs, that's all that matters to us. Now, there are offline systems, there are legacy systems that sometimes don't have APIs as well. So for that, we have a second module called the DX Graph, which syncs with all of your data from those backend systems and is creating essentially an API-first data layer on top of your offline systems, so that those can also be exposed to the front end as well. Now, here's an example, and I think we'll get into an actual demo of this today, where you have various headless services. You have Commerce Cloud in the back end. We're going to show today how you can switch out a CMS from Amplience to Contentful if you want, because you have an abstraction and an orchestration layer. In the middle, you can switch out Algolia from Algolia to Constructor or any other search platform if you want, because of the abstraction that's created within the orchestration layer. So all of that, what you see in the middle, is what Conscia is doing. There's a lot of API chaining going on. There's transformation of data from the original API call to what the front end needs. There's dependency management between those API calls that's happening. There's logic. So if CMS is contentful, so if your business users have, or maybe developers have set the condition that we want to use contentful instead of using Amplience, that logic is being managed in the orchestration layer as well, and you'll see a demo of that. And then, of course, the front end, in this case, is shown to be a web page or mobile screen, but it really could be anything that you can imagine. It's completely agnostic. You're calling Conscia with one API, we call it the Experience API. Conscia is then doing all of the work behind the scenes, bringing back exactly the response that the front end needs and nothing more, nothing less. So typically, what ends up happening is what's on the left, right? This is what I was explaining to you, where you have a front end and you have various back end APIs. Front end is making all of those calls to the back end systems through the APIs. It's going back, coming back with a response, going back out again, coming back with a response. And there's a bunch of calls that are happening in a very sequential fashion. Now, performance, of course, is a big concern to that, but also it's just not a very efficient thing to do. All of your logic is now sitting within the front end and it's sitting in code. Whereas when you go to the DXO, which is the orchestration layer, you're making one Experience API call to the DXO. DXO itself is sitting in on the edge. So all of the computations that I was just talking about, they're happening on the edge in the node that is closest to you. So there's performance gains from that perspective. But then we're taking on all of the work that you would otherwise be doing on the front end. So front end is simplified, not much going on anymore other than just make one call, get what you need, and display it. The elements of orchestration that we'll touch today are these four. I'll add one at the end. I should really have 5 boxes here. But connection to anything. So one thing that is very different about Conscia compared to other platforms like this is that we don't build special connectors to anything. We are agnostic of any backend whatsoever. As long as there's an API, RESTful or GraphQL, we can connect to it. So we call that a universal connector. So configuring a universal connector is a matter of minutes rather than days or weeks. A lot of times what you have to do with any system that says, any SaaS provider that tells you that they have connectors to anything, what that means is they build a custom-coded connector for a specific purpose. We don't believe in doing that. The whole point is that you want to stay agnostic of the back end. That middle layer needs to talk to anything whatsoever as long as it has an API. Transformation. So stitching the data from multiple APIs together. So for example, PDP page, product detail. Sometimes you need the content from a CMS that is related to the product. You need inventory from an inventory service. You need the product information from maybe Salesforce or a PIM, a real-time PIM. Now, that data needs to be stitched together for that page. What happens typically is you would do that on the front end. You would make those different calls, you would stitch that data together, you would make the transformation happen, and then display it. Now that is now happening with completely no code with a drag and drop interface, which we will show later, which you can use to actually develop the schema that you need without writing deploying a single line of code. Chaining the API calls is another aspect of orchestration, where you need to know which APIs need to be called in what sequence. So if you want to personalize an experience for a customer, you need to be able to call a CDP or maybe Data Cloud or CRM before you make the call to get the right content for that customer. That requires chaining of APIs. And we have to know exactly what needs to happen in what order to make that happen. Personalization isn't as simple as just tagging a bunch of content with customer segment. You need to go figure out what that customer segment is or what their context is first, and then make the second call to go get the right data and the right content for that at the right time. So that's happening within the DXO. And then finally, decisioning, right? So I want to show this type of content to this type of customer at this time. Or if you're a B2B player, for instance, or the right service, depending on who it is that is visiting your website, that requires decisioning. So that decisioning logic, that business logic is also available within Conscia. So I'm going to end with these 6 things that, I'll go back to this one. I said that there's one last piece that I did not have here, which is caching. So all of the engine, the DXO engine that is doing all of that work is caching at a very granular level what it can cache, right? So if certain backend APIs are slow, you can actually cache those contextually for that specific customer, for that specific context, so that in that same session, you don't have to make that second call again. There may be other calls that need to be made again because it's, for example, if you need to create an order, that's not something you want to cache. But if you just need to go get product information for a specific product that the customer just visited, that data should be cached. So you don't have to make that call again. So major performance gains because of the caching capabilities. Now, so how do we do this? If you were to summarize it, connect to anything whatsoever, lower your cost with no code or low code tooling, and zero infrastructure. So this is on, there's something funny? I thought that was I did not see it, so I have no clue what the joke is. So zero infrastructure, right? Instead of having to have DevOps and infrastructure around, like creating your own backend for front end, like GraphQL and Apollo and all those other ways of creating that BFF, you now have no infrastructure that you need to own or maintain, or no custom code that you need to maintain whatsoever. You're improving the performance through dynamic caching. You're centralizing your business logic with a native rules engine. So the business logic is not in 10 different places anymore. It's all sitting together in one place. You're unlocking the data from the legacy systems as well. So that most enterprises have legacy systems. There's no hidden secret about that. We all know we have databases and spreadsheets and file systems and whatnot that are sitting in the dark corners of your organization.
How's the layer working? It's connected to the database, and it's sitting on top of the database.
So the graph, the DX graph, which is the second module of Conscia, is a graph database that you can sync that data into, and we provide all of the syncing capabilities. So moving the data around, the jobs, the scheduling of the data to get into that DX graph. And then the DX graph itself has APIs that sit on top of it.
Yeah.
And that's what's connecting to the rest of the ecosystem through the engine. And then finally, future-proofing with an abstraction layer. So we truly believe that the front end should not know what the back end is at all. It should tell you, this is the schema model that I want to receive. I have these components on the front end. I just want the data in my way, right? That's what we do. We have that abstraction layer that translates the data, the schema from any backend to the schema model that you wish to have. So your front end can stay stable even if your backends are changing constantly.
Usually front-end developers don't know what's happening with the back-end developers. So.
Exactly. So you want to create that abstraction between them, right? You don't want the front-end developers to be worried about the schema of Algolia or Ampliance or anything whatsoever. You want them to stay agnostic. And that's it. I am done, and now I'm going to get into the demo.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we have two of our technical folks from offshore who has joined us, and so I'll quickly introduce Foha is our Salesforce B2C Composable Commerce Tech Lead, and Iftikhar is our Salesforce Certified B2C Commerce Architect. Foha, yeah, you're on.
Sure, thanks. So I'll take it from here to give you a quick walkthrough of the demo. Before I actually jump into the implementation that we've done using Conscia, I just want to outline what we actually did using the PWA kit that is offered by Salesforce directly. So over here, I got in this storefront. This is a custom storefront that we created on top of the one that was provided by Salesforce, and I have Constructor as a search engine working here. So just to give you a look of that, this is what it looks like. You can see it's powered by Constructor. I'm getting search suggestions, etc. The reason that I'm doing this is to give you an idea that we have done it both ways. We've done the Accelerator itself using the direct integration of a third-party search engine onto PWA Kit, and then we've repeated the same process using Conscia. And the difference or the effort that we had to put in was drastically different, being larger or being more in this case, where we're using the actual accelerator, and a lot less in the other case where we're using Conscia. So this is what we have for Constructor. If I move on to the next one, these URLs are deployed on MRT. We're using the PWA kit. This is Algolia. You can see powered by Algolia coming up here. If I search anything, you can see that my results are coming in here from the Accelerator directly. So moving on to Conscia, first I'll walk you through the dashboard and the configurations that we had to do in order to get this running. This is what your dashboard looks like as soon as you log in. And then you've got these components that show up. So the first thing that we do is that we create a connection. So if we're working, for example, with Constructor or we're working with Algolia, the first thing we're going to do is go and create a connection from here that is going to connect Conscia to that third-party vendor. Over here, I'll search Constructor. You can see over here, this is the configuration. It's pretty simple, very user-friendly. We're using the universal API connector that Sana mentioned as well. So this universal API connector can connect you to any third-party vendor. Over here, we've given the base URL of what we want to hit with Constructor. We then further append this, or we define it further using the confidence that I will be describing later on. We've got the headers and the query parameters that we need in order to establish the connection. So we have the same thing for Algolia, and then you'd have the same thing for any connection that you want to create. You would use the universal API connector and put in the base URL along with the headers that you require. So that's the first part. Then moving on to the components that we have. So as I mentioned, we've got the base URL defined, and then, for example, if you want to use one vendor for multiple functionalities, like if you want to use the search engine for autocomplete and then you want it for recommendations as well, you'd use that same connection or that same base URL, and then you would basically append into it or complete it using another component, which I'm going to show you right here. So I'll start with Constructor again, and you can see I've got Constructor autocomplete because that's the functionality that we've done over here in our storefront, and a mapper, which I'll come to next. So in our autocomplete over here, if I scroll down, you can see that I've used this JS expression from here, and you can see that I've basically it's a string that I'm going to append into the base URL that I defined earlier in the connection. This completes the API endpoint that you want to hit, and that is pretty much it for the autocomplete. Now, the next part is using an object mapper. What an object mapper does is, like Sana mentioned, we don't want our front end to be confused about when we're switching the back end. We don't want the front end to be able to detect anything. So what we do is that we take the response that we're getting from our back end, like this schema over here, and you can see that we're mapping each key to what the key value should be in our response. So this is what it should be, and this is what it's coming as from Constructor. So we map them parameter by parameter and make sure that it matches the response that we're expecting from our storefront, from our PWA kit, and that basically it creates a seamless integration between whenever you're switching the backend. It creates that seamless integration where you don't have to do anything on your PWA kit. So I've got these four. This would obviously vary according to the integration that you're doing. These were the only requirements that we had for this specific integration. And that is pretty much it for this. I've got the same thing done for Algolia. So whatever third-party vendor you're using in this case, because I'm talking about two, so I'm just going to show you what we did for each of them. So I've got a similar thing set up for Algolia. You've got the you've completed the API endpoint over here, and in the mapper you've got this, Again, you've got just a couple of parameters that you require from the front end. Now moving on to the actual search implementation. So over here, you can see you've got the model search. Model search is actually the component that's going to be communicating with your code. What it's responsible for doing is preparing the data in a way that your code can interpret it without letting it know that there's been a change in the backend. So if I were to, for example, switch to and from any backend third-party vendor, my model search would translate it before and it would get that response, provide it to my front end, and my front end would not have an idea that I've switched something or changed something from the back end because it's just getting what it expected. We're using this search source, which I'll explain right now after this, and we're deciding which search engine we want to use. So our POC for this Conscia implementation was basically, we would implement one search engine, we would do the groundwork of what we wanted our storefront to look like, what do we want the dropdown to look like, that front end one-time effort, and then we would switch out that search engine from, say, Constructor to Algolia or vice versa, and we wouldn't want anything to be disrupted on the storefront. So this search source is simply a component that we're using to provide or build a picker. So you can see this component builds the dropdown that a search engine that picks a search engine that you want to use. And basically, you can give it the values that you want, what the display should be, what the value should be, and it would use this to communicate and decide which engine you want to use. So I'm going to quickly show this from the debug tool that they have provided over here. This is a really great way for you to cross-check and see if everything's working the way that it should be. I'm going to search model search here because that's the end point that we're using. And then go over to context. So you've got your search key, then you've got both of your searches working. Each of their responses goes to the mapper object, which then maps the object and sends it over to the model search, which is in the end communicating with your code. And on the side, you've got your search source, which is basically what the user interacts with to decide which engine they want to enable. So this is like a very summarized version of what I've just explained. And now moving on to how we're actually going to pick and choose which search engine we want. So all of these things that I've described up till now, the connection, the components, everything is a one-time effort. Every time you want to introduce something new, for example, a new vendor, if we've got Constructor running, if I want to try out Algolia, for example, or if I want to try out any other third-party search engine, I would have to follow these steps one time. After that's done, I'll head over to my templates. And in my templates, I've got content sources. So because we're choosing where the content or where the source is coming from for our data, you can see that we've got other templates as well. This is the one that's relevant to me right now. If I edit this over here, you can see I've got my search source selected here in the experience components. And how I'm going to use this is I'll head over to the experiences from manage experiences, go over here to content sources, and then I've got search source. So whenever I want to switch between the engines, this is all I have to do. I have to edit my search picker, go over to experience, and you can see that there's a drop down here. So I'm going to give you a view of what the storefront looks like right now before I actually switch it. Right now, if I search something, trousers. So you can see I've got Constructor selected here, and all of my results are coming in from Constructor. I'll search something so you can draw a comparison of what the results look like. So this is what Constructor is providing me as search results. And then if I head over here and I switch this to Algolia, so it's as simple as that. Whenever I want to switch, all I have to do is I have to come over here, switch this, submit it, and then wait for this to load. Just a second. I'll head back, give it a refresh. There we go, powered by Algolia. And you can see that I searched the search same term, but because these results are coming in from a different search engine, my search results are basically different. That's all you have to do. I'm going to repeat the same thing for you for a hero banner source. So the hero banner source you can see over here is coming in from Page Designer. I want this to come in from Ampliance. So all I have to do is in content sources, again, I'm in the same place, go over to hero banner source. I'll click on edit, go to my experience, and I've got, as a page designer, Salesforce page designer, I want to activate Confluence. I'm going to click on submit, wait for it to load. Then I'll go back, give it a refresh. And this hero banner is now coming in from Confluence. So that's pretty much it. The accelerators that I showed in the beginning, they're all code-based. They're proper accelerators. They've got their own code. If you want to change something, you can see that these are different storefronts deployed on different MRT instances because it's not that easy to switch in between them once you have them implemented on a code level. But for Conscia, I have the same storefront, and I can basically switch and use any component from any vendor that I want. And it's as simple as simply coming over here and switching in between values that I have coming in from a dropdown. So that's it from my end. I'll hand it over to Maria from here to take it from more of a back-end perspective of what's going on from the Conscia side.